So today we're going to speak about the Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. Now, what we know about Edgar Allan Poe is that he is one of the greatest authors of American history or in American literature. He is one of the fathers of American fiction, among others from the same period, that is from the 19th century. And he is one of the people who have deeply emphasized, or rather deeply influenced this literature. His works were merely detective and gothic, including the ideals of the supernatural and superstition. That is, in his works, you are often going to find this superstitious aspect. More than you are going to find it in other authors' works, and this is what actually brings the aspect of irony to his works. I'm not sure if he does it, if he did it on purpose, or it came accidentally. But the more superstition there is, the more irony there is in his work, and this is what makes him distinguished and makes him a real genius as opposed to the other authors from his period, or from his from the same literary period within which he appeared. Now, do you think you can speak about the summary of the text of this story? Hello, anyone? Do you think you can speak about the story? Can you provide a summary of the story?
Yeah, Miss, I have some ideas about
Yes.
it, but I don't prepare something, so forgive my mistakes.
It's okay.
Okay,
We
so
are here to discuss the ideas together.
the story, the text tells the story of an unnamed narrator who approaches the house of Usher in order to visit his childhood or best friend, Roderick Usher, who was very sick and in need of company. But suddenly, the sister of Roderick, who called Madeline, died from a mysterious illness or sickness. But this is affected in the moral health and the health of Roderick. And suddenly, his sister come back from the grave in one stormy day. Okay, I don't remember the end of the story. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You've already provided an overview of the story. Anyone else? Do you have anything to add to what? I think this was Sanat. Sanat was speaking, right?
Yeah, it's me.
Yes. So anyone else wants to add anything to Sanat's summary? Oh God, nobody has read the story? Come on. So The Fall of the House of Usher is a short story. It's a Gothic short story which features the concepts of the supernatural, madness, and superstition. It's told or narrated by an unnamed narrator who, like Sanat said, was visiting his friend Roderick Usher in his mansion because he received a letter from him, who was asking him to come for him. That is, the narrator received a letter from Roderick Usher, who was begging him to come for him and to spend some time with him because he wasn't feeling okay. And as he arrived to this house, he felt that everything was gloomy and dark and anxious. What was known about the Usher family is that they were a family of incest. Like there was a lot of incest in their family, not only a lot of cousins marrying each other, and they were receiving or inheriting a lot of illnesses. So they were dying one by one, and the only survivors of the Usher family were Roderick and his sister Madeline. These two people, by living in total isolation together, have started to share the same features and have started to transform somehow into one person, not physically one person, but they were feeling the same affects. They were feeling this, having the same illnesses, and so on. In the beginning of the story, Roderick is described as a hypochondriac, that is, someone who thinks they are sick constantly, someone who is constantly is obsessed that they are ill, that they need a doctor, and so on. So you see that when the narrator arrives to the house, what he sees is not his old friend, but he meets someone who is very paranoid and who is very difficult to deal with. The narrator in the beginning wasn't thinking that things were so serious, but while arriving there and seeing his friend feeling as such, he thought that he had to stay there and spend some days with him in order to make him feel better. In the in the beginning of the story, we are told that when the narrator sees his friend, he is hardly able to recognize him because of the difference or the transformation in his body. As time goes on, uh, the narrator is trying to keep company to Roderick, and strange things start to happen in the house. That is, strange sounds are heard, and strange things often happen there. And then Madeline dies, and Roderick decides that to bury her in the courtyard. And after she is buried, in the beginning, Roderick seems to be doing well, but then he starts to become more paranoid than he did before. And he starts to have nightmares, and he thinks that his sister was buried alive. The supernatural aspect of the story occurs when the narrator is reading a poem to Roderick late at night in order to entertain him. The poem was about a war, but somehow all the sounds that were described in the poem were heard also in the house, which is the supernatural aspect of the story. So you can see things that are surreal. They are not realistic. They are things that are out of the common in the story. And one of the things that make the particularity and distinguish Edgar Allan Poe as an author from other writers is his use of the supernatural. I have shared a video of the Telltale Heart a few days ago with you on Facebook, and if you have read or watched the video, you have an idea of the story. It also includes the aspects of the supernatural and the superstitious. Example, he considers the eye as the eye of the evil. That is, the eye is not just an evil eye that disgusts him. He also thinks that the eye has um, other impact or other influences on him, just like the traditional superstitious idea or concept of the eye in the Arab and Maghrebi culture. And then, so the idea, the aspect of the superstition is what makes somehow it's what makes the entertainment in Edgar Allan Poe's works. In The Raven, for example, again, he chooses the black bird to represent death and to represent a terror. Again, he still goes back to the superstitious ideas and to the superstitious um, aspects that are usually known in culture, and he influences, or rather, he reinforces the superstition about them. That is, you think that a blackbird is bad? Yes, the blackbird is bad, and I am providing you here a whole poem about how a blackbird can be bad for you. He equally has a gothic story about a black cat, and so on. So I guess you get the idea about Edgar Allan Poe and his style. Yet he is very fun, he is very entertaining, even though his stories also often include the disgust and the supernatural. That is, even though he speaks of ghosts, but he is not that scary. To me, in my definition, he is more fun than scary, unless if you don't like that kind of stories. So back to the story. He starts thinking that Madeline was still alive. So as the narrator is trying to entertain Roderick, trying to read him some stories, some poems, they start hearing the same sounds in the house at the same time. So the things become supernatural in the house until by the end of the poem, Madeleine opens the door and she appears in the room. Indeed, Madeleine wasn't dead, or so we think. We are not sure whether she wasn't dead or that was an illusion in the narrator's mind. So during the narration, we realized that even the narrator was losing his mind. It wasn't only the case of Roderick. The narrator himself was not okay anymore. He wasn't. He was going mad too because of the strange things that were happening in the house. So even though we are reading that he saw Madeleine coming back, she opened the door, she stepped in. We're not sure whether that thing really happened. We're not sure whether that was just an illusion or whether it's just part of the supernatural. All that, the entire combination makes something beautiful. That is the fact that there is the mysterious and the fact that there is the supernatural mingled together. They come up with something beautiful in the story. So Madeline comes in, she falls on the body of her brother Roderick, and now the two of them are truly dead. Okay, so even the fact that she fell on the body of her brother, finally making up one whole body together, is part of the incestuous aspect of the family, of the Usher family. It's also part of the fact that the two of them have been living together for a long time. They were living in total isolation, and thus they had to die together. And it's also interpreted as a form of revenge by some people. The fact that he buried her, not even being sure whether she died or not, and they say that she came back in order to take her revenge. You see that there is the aspect of the mystery in his in at the end of the story and in the interpretation of the story. You may provide any of these interpretations and defend any of these interpretations. I leave it open because it can be any of these. I don't. I hate putting ends and closures to interpretations. I don't like to put only one interpretation and avoiding other interpretations. To me, all these interpretations can be true. That is, it can be the idea that the ancestors' idea that the two brothers loved each other so much that they had to die together, that they had started to turn or to transform into one whole body. The fact that they are the last survivors of the Usher family and they had to die together again, and the fact that they had lived in total isolation and they started to be alike because they were disconnected from other people. And finally, the idea that she may have come back or that she came back for her revenge. That is, she came back to revenge, not because she liked him. Okay, so this is in short a very quick overview of the story, and we are now going to speak deeper about the story. We're going to speak about the excerpt that I have selected for you. We're going to stop at each part and discuss it more particularly. But what we know so far about the main themes of the story is that it includes the themes of madness, the themes of the mysterious, superstition, um, and the artistic um, creativity, if I would say so. So when we're speaking of madness, we can see madness both in the characters of Roderick as well as the narrator himself, when none of them is no longer sure of anything around them. They are not sure of the things that are true. They can no longer make the difference between reality and things that are unreal. In the fact that they hear the voices, they see strange things happening in the house, but they are not sure whether these things are truly happening. At the end of the story, when the narrator escapes the house, he sees a crack happens in the house, actually, and that's symbolic. The crack was already there when he arrived to the house, but the more things became more complicated, the more the crack opened more and became more dangerous or more serious. After the death of the two brothers, when they fell on the floor, the crack became even larger. The narrator was scared, so he escaped from the house. And when he was running away from the house, he saw the light of the moon coming towards him. So as he turned away, or as he turned back in order to see what was happening, where the light came from, he found out that the entire house had cracked and fell apart. The entire house had cracked and it fell into pieces, which is the literal meaning of the title of the story, which is the fall of the house of Usher. So when we're speaking of the fall of the house of Usher, on the one side, we're speaking of the end of the family line, the Usher family line, because Roderick and Madeline were the last members of the Usher family. And on the other side, we're speaking of the real, literal fall of the house, which is the crack of the house, and the fact that the house was split in two parts at the end of the story. But again, even when the author says that, or sorry, even when the narrator says that the house had cracked and fell into two pieces at the end of the story, we are not sure whether that truly happened or whether it was just in the brain of the narrator. Because again, the narrator had started to feel mad. He has been losing his sanity, and he was no longer able to recognize things that are true or realistic from things that are not true. One more aspect or one more theme of the story is that of the artistic creativity. Now, I say artistic creativity because the author didn't just write this just to scare the readers. The author also wrote for what is known as art for art's sake. He was writing art just because he loved art. He was using fantasy and the supernatural because he wanted to muse on art, on the beauty of art. He wanted to exploit his imagination and fantasy. So one of the reasons for which he chose the Gothic and the supernatural was simply because he wanted simply for creativity. Okay, so creativity here becomes one of the basic themes of the author. The all the aspects of the disgust, the madness, the supernatural, and so on. All of these make up together a surrealist narrative which is very artistic and very creative. Edgar Allan Poe is often referred to as a great genius because of his ability to write things so beautiful. Now, before we start reading the text, do you have any comments or any questions about the story or about what has been discussed? Anything? Hello, do you hear me?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
Miss,
Yes?
Can we also add to the themes reality vs fiction?
Reality as fiction. Hello?
No, versus fiction. Can we add the theme to this short story? Reality versus fiction.
Fiction. Can you explain?
For example, the reality when the narrator visits his friend, and the fiction we may includes when the sister of Roderick Usher moves in the house or the fell of the house, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That's true or false, miss?
In this case, we can speak of the supernatural. Okay, that is in this case, we're
Okay.
rather speaking about the supernatural and fantasy because remember that this is a Gothic story and it's merely a sorry, this is a Gothic romantic story. So before anything else, we are speaking here of the aspects of romanticism in the story. Okay, and we're speaking of the basic aspects of romanticism, which are extreme experiences and Gothicism. Now, I think Kenza had something to say. Hussein Kenza, did you have anything to say, Kenza?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
miss.
Mm-hmm.
The theme of fantasy and versus reality.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the narrator's description of the Usher family home seems impossible. A house can be even decayed but still intact.
Can you repeat? I'm not sure I got that.
A house can be every decade but still intact.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The
Yes, this
fantasy
is one of the oppositions that we can find in the story.
fantasy versus reality.
Yes, this is actually one of the different oppositions we can find in the story. But again, yeah, you can consider it that way, even though I'm not really um, fond of saying it's reality versus fantasy or reality against fiction. To me, it's the aspect of fiction itself and the aspect of the supernatural, the surreal itself, okay, more than an opposition of reality and non-reality. Even though the narrator, sorry, even though the narrator wasn't sure at different times whether he was saying things that were seeing things that were true or not, but to me, it's the fact that he wasn't sure whether things were happening or not happening, whether it was a simple illusion or whether they were happening, comes from the aspects of the of anxiety. It comes from the supernatural and from madness. But yeah, you can see it that way, guys. You can consider that there is an opposition between between the real and the unreal or the and fiction. Sorry. Anyone else? Or do you have anything else to add?
There is another point, symbols.
Symbolism. Yes, there's a lot of symbolism in the story. Actually,
Well,
Gothicism itself is full of symbolism. Mhm.
like the weather seems dark and gloomy.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Dark and gloomy, and the
Hmm.
cold autumn
The cold autumn.
day.
Yes, on the cold autumn day. Yes.
Yes,
This also reminds me of the title. So the fall is not just the title actually is a pun. So it's
yes,
the actual fall of the house itself, the end of the family ball. So the fall, which is a reference to the season. Yes, Kendra?
yes, yes. That's
Anything? Yes. Anything else to add?
no.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody
Yes,
else?
miss.
Yes, Sana?
Okay, here, what is the relation between romanticism and supernatural? Can we say that supernatural is an aspect of romanticism?
Of course it is.
But when we learn the romanticism, we don't say that there is supernatural in the aspects of romanticism.
I believe we have talked about the supernatural in the aspects of romanticism in the first semester when we were speaking about the British romanticism. Romanticism is going to be the same. It has the same concepts, be it in Britain or in America, although it's somehow embodied differently in America. But there is the supernatural in the aspects of romanticism, be it in Britain or in America. You know, when we were speaking about romanticism in Britain, we said there's, of course, the first and the second generation, but we also said there is this um, optimist romanticism, or let's say the nature glorifying romanticism, the peaceful romanticism, and there is also the Gothic romanticism. And in Gothic romanticism, in the first semester, we have spoken about Frankenstein. Now we're speaking about the fall of the House of Usher. So there's always the aspect of the supernatural in Gothicism. Otherwise, we cannot really truly write Gothicism without the supernatural. Okay, and the fact that the authors would still go to the supernatural in romanticism is due to the idea that they want something different, something new, and something extreme. Remember, the Romantics wanted to read and write something different. They wanted to write something new, and they wanted to feel extreme experiences. The supernatural is always there. It is there in the extreme experiences, in the exotic experiences, and in things that are new and different. Okay, there's always been there the supernatural. Now, is it okay, Sana?
Okay, thank
All right.
Yeah, it's
Anybody
okay.
else?
Thank
Any
you.
questions, comments? Okay, let's go back to the text. I hope that you've read the text before the session, so we can analyze it together. We can discuss it together. Now, as we are reading the text, I want you to extract the basic aspects of the text that you may notice, or let's say, what are the elements that the author tried to use in the text? Okay, I want you to think about the main elements that we can see in the text. So he's speaking about his arrival to the Usher house, or to the house of the Ushers. He says, upon my entrance, Usher arose from a sofa on which he had been lying at full length, and greeted me with vivacious warmth, which had much in it I at first thought an overdone cordiality of the constrained effort of the ennuyé man of the world. That is, as he arrived to the house, he was greeted so with vivacity by Roderick that he thought that Roderick was overdoing. He thought that Roderick was exaggerating, that he was just bored, and he was just exaggerating politeness in greeting him. And later, we're going to realize that he greeted him that way because he was feeling somehow, let's say, is feeling hopeless. And maybe when he saw him, he started to feel more hopeful for a better condition. So I will proceed with the reading. I'm reading in line number 4. A glance, however, at his countenance, that is, his physical appearance, a glance, however, at his countenance convinced me of his perfect sincerity. That is, the fact that he saw how he looked, that is how Roderick looked, made him realize that Roderick was actually honest in his while greeting him that way. He wasn't exaggerating. Roderick was truly happy that his friend arrived. We sat down, and for some moments while he spoke not, I gazed upon him with a feeling half of pity, half of awe. Surely man had never before so terribly altered in so brief a period as had Roderick Usher. That is, nobody has ever changed. Sorry? Nobody has ever changed physically in such a short time as Roderick Usher actually did. It was with difficulty that I could bring myself to admit the identity of the one being before me with the companion of my early boyhood. So now the narrator is actually comparing the man he sees in front of him, that is Roderick Usher, the adult, with the young Roderick Usher he had known in his childhood, and he couldn't bring that person to the other. He couldn't see any resemblance with among them. That is, he thought they were two entirely different people. And this is again to show that Roderick Usher has so terribly changed through time, and he changed in a negative way. Yet the character of his face had been at all times remarkable. A cadaverousness of complexion, that is, his complexion, his skin is somehow cadaverous, it has the color of a dead body. An eye large, liquid, and luminous beyond comparison. Now he's describing Roderick Usher. And I want you to think about the description, how Roderick Usher is actually described in the text. How is he presented? What kind of person do you imagine while thinking about him? So he says a cadaverousness of complexion, an eye large, liquid, and luminous beyond comparison, lips somewhat thin, and very pallid. They were very pale. They were hardly pink. There was almost no color in his lips, but of a surpassingly beautiful curve. That is, although they were pale and so on, but they had a beautiful curve. A nose of a delicate Hebrew model. That is, I'm sure you know what is meant by the Hebrew model. That is like that of a Jew. Okay? But with a breadth of nostril unusual in similar formations. That is, the nostrils were somehow or were unusually large compared to his nose. Okay, so we know his nose is somehow thin, but the nostrils of the nose are truly large. They are unusually large. A finely molded chin. Now the chin is the where the face ends. It's right on bottom of the mouth. It's the bottom of the face. A finely molded chin. So he has a beautiful chin. Speaking in its want of prominence. Now we know that the chin is big. It's huge. Okay. If it's speaking in its want of prominence, that is the chin truly wants to be seen. Okay, it wants to be seen, it wants to talk, so the chin is truly big. And of want of moral energy, hair of a more than web-like softness and tenuity. The web of a spider, girls usually touch that when we are cleaning. It's very soft. So he's comparing his hair to the softness of the web of a spider. These features, with an inordinate expansion above the regions of the temple, made up altogether a countenance not easily to be forgotten. And now, in the mere exaggeration of the prevailing character of these features, and of the expression they were wont to convey lay so much of change that I doubted to whom I spoke. That is, he could hardly recognize his friend. He was doubting he was speaking to the Roderick he has always known. Now the ghastly pallor of the skin, so we know that his skin is very pale, and the now miraculous luster of the eye, his eyes are big and lustrous and luminous, above all things startled and even awed me. So these things are kind of scaring him. They are even as kind of startling him and stressing him. The silken hair, too, had been suffered to grow all unheeded, and as in its white gossamer texture, it floated rather than fell about the face. Okay, so the hair was very soft. We said like the softness of the web of a spider. This is what is actually meant here by the word gossamer texture. Okay, so the gossamer texture is the texture of the spider web, which is very soft. So the silken hair too, in its had been suffered to grow all unheeded. That is, the hair couldn't really or truly be in shape. Okay, it was just floating in the air. It floated rather than fell about the face. I could not, even with effort, connect its arabesque expression with any idea of simple humanity. So the hair wasn't straight. It floated in the air, but also had an arabesque expression. You know what is meant by the arabesque? Usually, arabesque drawings are they are
زخرفة.
forms. Yes, they are shapes and
زخرفة.
forms that go different in different directions, and this is how you can imagine the hair. Sorry. Yes, it's zakhrafa in Arabic, but we better keep things English. Okay, you're in third year now, so better provide a definition in the English language. All right. So the arabesque expression is the fact that the hair had been floating in different directions over his head. Okay. So I want you to think about the description of Roderick and tell me what is the first thing you can think about. What do you think of the description? Anyone?
Miss,
Yes?
I think that the narrator is well describing his friend, Roderick Usher,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that used to be a good reader and an educated man,
Mm-hmm.
and he also liked to play his guitar. But when he visited him, he saw that he is totally changed in
Yep.
his physical and mental appearances.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you.
That's all. You're
Yes, thank you
welcome.
very much, Fatima. Anyone else? What do you think of the description of Roderick Usher? Did you try to imagine him? How do you imagine him? He says cadaverousness of complexion. The complexion is very pale. It has the color of a dead body. The eyes are large and lustrous. The lips are even pale, and the chin is huge. The nose is thin, but it has very large nostrils. Do you know what is meant by the nostrils? They are the two holes in the nose. Very large nostrils. And the hair, which is very soft but floating in the air like an arabesque. What do you think of the description?
He is
Hideous looking.
Yes? Who is speaking?
Hideous. Hideous looking.
Hideous. Yes, Jihad. Hideous. Yes. What else? Yes. Let me ask you the question differently. if you are provided this text in an exam and you are asked to comment on the writing style, what would you say? If you are provided this excerpt and you are told uh, to comment on the writing style of the author, what would you say? The author uses what in his description? The
Lots
elements.
of similes
What kind of elements? Yes.
and metaphor. A lot of similes and metaphors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what kind of similes and metaphors? Are they beautiful? Are they happy? Are they scientific? Are they how can we classify them? Hello.
Supernatural.
Hmm?
Supernatural.
Yes, supernatural. Okay. They are not only supernatural, but they also include the element of the disgust. They are disgusting. Okay. The eyes that are liquid, luminous, the cadaverousness complexion. I mean, come on, think about it. There's the aspect of the disgust. Okay, he's using the aspect of the disgust. This is how you write
Miss,
disgust. Yes,
I
yes, please.
think that also the author used. I think that the narrator also used a lot of symbols
Mm-hmm,
and motifs, like when he describing the sounds when he entered to the house,
mm-hmm,
and even his description for the strong strange and the strong storm that was happened after the death of Madeleine.
mm-hmm. Yes,
And
indeed.
for the symbols, he used the word eyes, and also his description for the house of Usher, which is isolated and quietly strange.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
all the things that you have mentioned are true. All of them are true. This is all these are the symbolic aspects or the different symbols that have been or that came in the text by Edgar Allan Poe. But now let's stick to the text that to the excerpt that we have in hand and try to think about them. Try to reflect on the excerpt itself. Now, Yusra here says he uses the Gothic elements of the supernatural and evil to convey the tale of horror. Yes, indeed, he does. And the house seemed to cause madness of the last Usher family members. Indeed, yes, indeed, true. So let's focus now on the excerpt that we have in hand and try to extract all the elements of the analysis from the excerpt. Unfortunately, we cannot speak of the plot in the excerpt because the excerpt is very short. But if we were to speak about the general plot of the entire story, the plot begins with the first complication or the first conflict when the narrator receives the letter from Roderick Usher, who is asking him to come to the house, and then things start to be a little more complicated as the narrator arrives to the Usher family house. He sees his friend Roderick being different, having changed from his childhood. Things become a little more complicated, and then they hear the strange voices in the house, the strange as if strange things happen in the house. Things become more stressful for the narrator. The moment that Madeline dies, I guess that's the climax. Actually, the climax of the story can be placed in two places or in two different spots of the story. It's to me, it's a matter of interpretation. It could be the moment in which Madeline is dead, and they no. No, I'm not going to consider it as the moment in which Madeleine is dead because there is even worse than that. So Madeleine's death is just one more conflict that adds to the complication of the plot, or that participates, sorry, in raising the action, or in complicating the plot. But the climax, I think, is the moment in which they hear the strange voices when he is reading the poem, and the strange voices occur at the same time, leading to Madeleine's arrival to the room, and the fact that Madeleine has killed her brother Roderick. I guess that's the climax of the plot. The plot then resolves and becomes to fall and the action becomes to fall as the narrator escapes the house and starts to walk away from the house, or rather, he is running away from the house, which is also the end of the story, because we know that the end of the story ends when the narrator actually escapes the house. Okay, so in short, the plot can be discussed in these terms. That is, conflicts begin when the narrator receives the letter from his friend Roderick. Things become a little more complicated as strange things happen in the house, as he notices that everything is gloomy and dark and mysterious in the house, that even supernatural things are happening there. The sister Madeleine dies and she is buried. Things become a little more complicated. It reaches a climax when Madeleine is back from the death in order to take her brother. She kills her brother, and things start to resolve, if we can consider that as a resolution, when the narrator escapes the house. Do you have any problems or questions regarding the plot?
Miss,
Yes?
can we think about a lot of plots here? For example, we can say that we can say also that the plots began when the narrator visits his friend, and climax when the death of Madeleine, and resolution when the house is fall.
Actually, I would have thought about it that way in the beginning, but Madeleine's death is not the worst thing that happened. Okay, the climax usually is the point in which things are the most complicated in the story. But I guess there were things that were even worse. The Madeleine's death was the beginning of the huge problems, because they had small problems before. Madeleine's death is the beginning of the most important, or even more important, problems. So there were moments in the story that were even more complicated than Madeleine's death, which is the consequences of Madeleine's death. The fact that Roderick was constantly having um, the fact that Roderick was constantly having these paranoid thoughts about his sister's death, about the fact that he buried her alive, his nightmares, and the narrator trying to soothe him all the time, and then the fear both of them have felt when they were hearing the noises while reading the poem. That was very stressful to them, even more stressful than her death. And then her arrival inside the room, which is even worse than her death. I mean, what would be worse, killing or being sure that someone died, or seeing the dead person coming back from the death? Okay, so I think since there were other events that were even more serious than her death, so her death is not the climax. The climax is actually the
Miss,
most complicated point. Yes, yes.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just want to ask you. So he buried his sister alive.
Again, this is one of the parts in which things are blurred. You see, This is the supernatural aspect of the text, but this is where things are blurred. One of the things that Poe does in his text is that he doesn't give you certainty. We are never sure of what we see with him. We're never sure whether things truly happened or whether they were just illusions in the mind of the speaker. So when Roderick says that he thinks he buried her alive, he's not sure whether he truly buried her alive or whether they were illusions in his brain. When she comes back and kills him, we're not sure whether she rose from the dead or whether she was alive in her tomb through all the time or all that time. Okay, that is why reading Poe, you have to forget about rationality, forget about logic, and just follow the story. Okay, because if you're going to think about it realistically and you're going to be logic while reading him, you're going to say, no, she didn't rise from the dead. So she must have been alive through all that time in her tomb. But the author suggests that she came back from the dead more than suggests that she was alive in her tomb. Do you get what I mean here? Hello? Do you
Yes,
understand?
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So there is the lack of uncertainty. There is this constant aspect of uncertainty. We're never sure. We're never certain of anything with him because, and he does it on purpose. This is why there is the aspect of the mysterious in the story. Okay. So among the aspects of the story, we have the mysterious, the fact that we're never sure of anything, madness,
Guess.
and
Guessing.
sorry?
He just guess.
He doesn't guess. He does it on purpose to create doubt in the mind of the reader. Okay? So the point here is not that he is trying to guess, but he's creating doubt in our minds. He's creating doubt and curiosity in our minds. And this is the thing with great literature. Great literature is a literature that will keep you asking questions all the time. It's a literature that will keep you curious about answers all the time, but we're never sure of anything. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, among the elements of the text that we have here throughout the entire story, there is the element of the mysterious, madness, the supernatural, symbolism as a great aspect in the text, and the disgust and hideousness. The disgust in the fact that the descriptions are disgusting, descriptions are scary, dark, and disgusting. Okay? These are the themes of the text have also been discussed earlier. So I guess we can speak directly of the two characters in the text. The two characters in the present excerpt are the narrator and Roderick. The narrator is unnamed. Sorry, we have an unnamed narrator, but he reveals himself, or rather, he presents himself as a logical, rational person who is simply trying to soothe his friend. He is visiting his friend to soothe him. And Roderick Usher, who is described as his good old friend, someone who used to be really well educated, someone who used to be even vivacious and polite during his childhood, and who used to have very beautiful features. But then, as he grows in age, as he grows old, he changes a lot physically because he lives in total isolation from society. So he begins to change, to alter, and he's even preparing himself to die in a way, and simply because he's living in total isolation from society. The protagonist here is Roderick Usher. I don't know if I can consider the narrator as a protagonist. The story is more about Roderick Usher than about the narrator. To me, it's the protagonist is Roderick and not the narrator. Yet the point of view is first person because the narrator himself is telling the story, things that happen to him, and there are things that happened around him. That is, he is not reporting things that happen to the others. He is there, he is inside the text, he is inside the scene, inside the incidents. Things are happening to him at the same time. So the point of view is first person. Peripheral, it's not central because things are happening to him, but he is not the protagonist. Okay, so the point of view is first person, peripheral, because the events are happening to the narrator. The narrator is included in the narration. He is included in the events that he is narrating, yet he is not the protagonist. The narrator is also a main character. He is not the protagonist, but he is a main character. They are, whether they are round or flat, they are round to me, even though they are not 100% lifelike, but they are multi-dimensional and they truly, they definitely develop through the narration from the beginning to the end. Yes?
Miss,
Yes?
Miss, can we consider Madeline as an antagonist?
I wouldn't do that.
Why?
Why? Yes, at some part of the text, she did scare. She was scary to the narrator, to both the narrator and Roderick. But even though she was the cause of his death, but did she do it on purpose? This is the question. Okay. And
Yes.
to me, she didn't do it on purpose to kill Roderick, especially if she came back from the dead. So I wouldn't consider her as an antagonist.
So she's a flat character, or
No, she's one of the main characters. She's not a flat character. She's not a flat character. She's one of the main characters.
but not the antagonist.
Sorry?
I said, but she's not the antagonist.
I myself I personally wouldn't consider her as the antagonist because it is true that we say that the antagonist is that who is trying to hurt the antagonist, that who is
Yes,
trying.
but we don't even know if that's true, if that she really killed him.
I don't see her as someone who is doing it on purpose. See,
Yes.
I don't see her as someone who is scaring them on purpose. So we can say I would consider anxiety as an antagonist more than Madeleine herself, because what truly killed them was the anxiety and the paranoid atmosphere they were living in, more than more than Madeleine as a person. But this is just my own interpretation. Other people would have other interpretations and would surely consider her as an antagonist. That is, what I'm providing here is a subjective personal interpretation. This is not the other critics' interpretation. That is, to me, she's not the antagonist because she never did it on purpose. She wasn't trying to hurt on purpose. She was buried and then she came back from the dead. If you would consider her as an other creature, as a different supernatural creature, not a human being, after she came back from the dead, then yes, in this case, she could be an antagonist. Do you get what I mean here? That is, Madeleine
Yes.
herself as a human being was not an antagonist. What was an antagonist to me was the anxiety and the pessimism of the house, the fact that they lived in total isolation, the fact that they were the darkness in which they were living. That in itself was an antagonist because that was what led to their death. If we would consider Madeleine as a supernatural creature after she came back from the dead, then yes, here in this case, she is an antagonist because After her death, she is no longer a human being. She is a supernatural creature, probably a very old version of a zombie. But in that case, yes, she
A
comes
ghost.
back as an antagonist. Okay, so antagonist here is the gothic aspect in which they were living, the all the horror and the pessimism in which the two brothers were living, rather than a person herself being an antagonist. Does this answer your question? I hope I'm
Yes.
not confusing you. You know, in literature,
No,
there is in
it's
literature
clear.
there is no. Thank you. The thing with literature is that there is no fixed meanings or no fixed interpretations. Literature is constantly evolving and it's constantly changing. Okay, this is why sometimes you're going to find an antagonist a human being. Sometimes the antagonist is something else. Some critics will consider someone as an antagonist. Others are not going to consider them as such. So others will consider them differently. Now,
Yes, madam. Yep.
let's have a look at the figures of speech that we have in the text. Before we speak about the figures of speech, I would love to speak about the register, diction, and the tone, as well as the atmosphere. So to me, the register and diction are more Latin origin. Sorry,
Yes.
the diction is more Latin origin than Anglo-Saxon origin, and the register is simple. It's simple, formal, not much of a colloquial language, so it's a simple and formal language. Yes, someone speaking? Hello?
Yes, me.
Mhm.
Can we consider Madeline as protagonist because she is victim of illness and death?
No, because she's not the central character. The only central character, the only person who is central from the beginning to the end of the story is Roderick, and not Madeline. So it's not the narrator, it's not Madeline, it's actually Roderick, because Roderick is the only central character who is the main topic of the discussion from the beginning to the end of the story. See that in the excerpt that we have here, the narrator is invited by Roderick. He comes to Roderick and he only describes Roderick. Okay, so Roderick gets the largest share of the text here. What do you think of the general atmosphere of the excerpt that we have here? Remember that the atmosphere is the general mood of the text or general feeling in the text. So what do you think of the atmosphere of the text?
It is dark and gloomy,
Yes, dark and gloomy. Mhm.
odd, odd,
Did you say old or odd?
odd.
Okay, yes. There are things that are strange and bizarre, and actually all these are also the aspects of Gothic literature. Okay, there is all the things that you are going to feel in the atmosphere are also aspects of Gothic literature. So there is the supernatural, the mysterious, the superstition, the strange, the disgusting, the things that are bizarre, weird, and the yeah, the darkness in general. Okay. Now, as we speak of the tone of the author, what do you think of the tone of the author? The tone is the feeling of the author. Do you remember that? Hello, is anyone here? Hello.
Betty?
I was saying, what do you think of the um, what do you think Sorry, what do you think of the tone of the author, the feelings of the author? If you were the author, how do you feel about the people that are listed in the text? For example, Roderick. How do you feel about him if you were Poe?
Miss,
Miss, it's pity,
Excuse me, can you repeat?
pity,
Pity. Yes, who's speaking?
me.
Jihad?
I, yes, I said pity.
Yes, he can say pity. So we know that he feels sorry for him, especially for the transition or the metamorphosis that he went through from his youth to his uh, adulthood. So, yeah, probably there is pity. He feels sorry for him. What else? Anyone else?
Miss, can
Miss,
we
can we
Yes,
I
Sana?
said
sad?
can we say sadness or melancholy?
Melancholy? Yes, you can
Mhm.
say melancholy, but can you explain?
Because here the author is sad about the Usher family.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Actually, you can feel that the author is somehow sad for him, but melancholy is something that Roderick Usher was living rather than Poe was feeling for him. Even though even though Edgar Allan Poe himself lived in melancholy for some time, but melancholy in this text is found more in the context, that is, in the atmosphere, rather than in the tone of the author. Kenza?
Miss,
Thank you.
Miss,
Yes, Fatima? Yes, Fatima?
can we say that the author was scary because of the stranger event that was happened at that house?
Do you mean the author was scared rather than scary?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Um, I always say that an author cannot be scared of his own text. I mean,
So,
Edgar Allan
he
Poe
was
made the text. Yes, Jihad?
wondering, wondering.
Wondering. Um,
Yes.
what do you mean by wondering?
I don't know about what happening in that house, but what was happening in that house.
Yes, so you mean perplexed, confused, stressed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Something like
Yeah,
that.
you can think of it that way. But one thing I always say about authors is that I never think that the author is scared of his own text. But one thing, Fatima, you should bear in mind is that there is a difference between the author and the narrator. The narrator is that who is telling the story inside the story, but the author is always stepping outside the story. He is the one who is writing the story or making the story. So in the case that we have here, Edgar Allan Poe is the author, but the narrator is unnamed. The narrator is definitely scared. The narrator is definitely confused because of what he had to witness in the house. He even ran from the house at the end of the story. He escaped the house. He was running away from the house because he was scared. But Edgar Allan Poe never was inside his story. He was definitely feeling anxious. He was definitely depressed while writing the story. He was known as someone who lived in depression, sorry, for a long time. But I wouldn't say he was scared of his text. So in the tone, that is in the feelings of the author, we can feel some pity towards the author, the protagonist. Sorry, He may have felt some sympathy. Maybe he identified with the protagonist somehow, because we know that Edgar Allan Poe was depressed for a long time. So probably he was feeling probably he identified with his character for a while writing about him. Okay, so we know that there is a lot of pity and a lot of sensitivity between them. Yes, Fatima? Yes?
I do not mean that the narrator was scared of his text. I mean that he was scared when he was inside the house and the event was happening.
Yes, but the
I
narrator
But
is
we are
want
inside the
to
talking
story.
about the
say
author.
Yes, thank you.
We
But
are talking about the author, not the.
exactly. We're now speaking about the author. We're not talking about the narrator, because the narrator is inside the story, but the author is outside the story. He's the one who made and wrote the story. Now let's see Hussein Kenza, who has something to say. Kenza, can you activate your microphone and speak? Kenza? Kenza? Okay, I don't think she's here anymore. So let's speak very quickly. Yes?
Miss,
Yes, Sabrina?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Um, I think that's the narrator um feels a pity about the poor user.
What? Can you repeat, please? Feels?
I said that concerning the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the narrator feels pity about the poor user. Uh,
Yes.
he
The
he
narrator.
he knows that he's going to be mad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, and he can't do anything to help him.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yes, true.
So he was sure from the beginning that that uh, that the end will be bad.
Mhm. Yes.
I think that's all.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sabrina. So yes, it's true that it was very clear from the beginning that the end was going to be bad. That which is the goal of a Gothic narration or a Gothic story. And I think we can conclude here that the feelings of the author are actually embedded in the text, both in the feelings of the narrator towards the speaker, and also we can feel that the author, to some extent, uh, felt um, or rather, identified for a while with the protagonist. Okay. Now, let's speak directly about the figures of speech. Can we move to the figures of speech? So there are a lot of figures of speech here in the text. Um, I will let you find some of them. Can you find any figures of speech? I know I don't want to waste more time here with you because sorry, not with you, but I'm sorry. I meant I'm not going to make you waste more time. Sometimes we tend to express ourselves in the worst manners. I'm sorry about that. What I meant is that I don't want to waste your time. Okay? So if we would take the silken hair, sorry, if you would take the sentence here, the silken hair, this is a metaphor which means that the hair was very silky, the hair was very soft like silk. The hair, he says, had been suffering to go unheeded. This is a personification because usually human beings suffer and not hair. But what is meant here is that the hair couldn't stand still. The hair couldn't be straight. It was unable to stand straight. And the hair, he says, floated. Okay. It connects its Arabic. He couldn't connect his arabesque expression with any idea of simple humanity. There are two main figures of speech here. So the arabesque expression is again a metaphor, which means that the hair was wavy, and its idea with any. Sorry, he could connect it with any idea of simple humanity, which is again a metaphor, which means that the hair was awkward, bizarre, strange, and very different from the usual human hair. Cadaverousness of complexion is also a metaphor, which is in which the author is comparing the skin of Roderick Usher to the skin of a dead body, which shows that the color of his skin was grayish and very
Miss,
ugly. Yes.
so you said at the first place the title is a pun.
Yes,
Can we
the
consider
title is a
it
pun.
figure of speech
Sorry?
or not? Can we consider it with the figures of speech?
Of course it is. Okay. The title is a pun. It's a figure of speech. Okay. That is, the title has two meanings. It has double meaning. The first meaning is a metaphorical meaning, which means the end of the family line, of the Usher family line. And the second meaning is a literal meaning, which means the crack and the real fall and destruction of the house of the Usher family. Okay?
Miss,
Yes,
Miss,
Sabrina? Yes.
there is an example of personification.
Yes.
In the example of I like windows.
Where is that? Is it in the excerpt here?
Yeah, there is I like.
Which line is that? I'm sorry, I couldn't find it.
I'm sorry, I cannot see the screen, but I wrote it before.
Okay. Can you read the entire sentence?
I don't remember because I wrote only such words. Because I wrote only the example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just provide the word again. What was the word?
I like.
I. Can you repeat, Sabrina? I didn't understand it.
I said I like.
I like.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm hearing you correctly because I couldn't. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'm not sure I can hear you.
I like. I like.
I like
Miss, I like.
Anyway, we will get back to this later because right now I couldn't hear the word. If you can type it in the conversation, please type it in the conversation so I can see it clearly because I'm not sure I got your meaning correctly. I'm sorry because I couldn't hear you clearly. So try to write it down so I can find it later in the text. In the meanwhile, did any of you, the others, find any other figures of speech in the text?
Hello,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think that there is an exaggeration in the first sentence.
Mm-hmm.
I can't read it right now, but you can say it maybe.
I will read, you said the first sentence. I'm going to read the first sentence again.
Okay, okay.
He says, upon my entrance, Usher arose from a sofa on which he had been lying at full length, and
Yeah.
greeted me with a vivacious warmth which had much in it I at first thought of an overdone cordiality, of the constrained effort of the unwearied man of the world.
Yeah, the last one, the last part of the sentence, I guess.
The constrained effort of the unwearied man of the world.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you can consider that as an exaggeration because he's considering him as the most, as someone who is really bored from the entire world, or someone who is um, the
Yeah.
most
Extremely
bored, very bored.
bored
Yes,
and were like,
yes, you can totally consider that as an exaggeration.
yeah.
Okay, Sabrina, can you please type the word you were speaking about in the conversation so we can see it? If you don't have any more
Miss,
figures, yes,
I think there is another hyperbole or hyperbole, I don't know.
hyperbole.
Surely man had never before so terribly. It's
Yes, surely man has
yeah,
never been so terribly altered
yeah,
in such a short time. Very good. Yes, that's also a
yeah,
hyperbole. That's also an exaggeration because he's saying
yeah,
that nobody has ever changed so much in such a short time, while he hasn't met all the people around the world, and probably other people did. So, yes, very good. That's also one more exaggeration. Okay, I think we can stop here for today. I guess the idea of the text and the basic elements of the text are very clear to you. Um, the main thing about Edgar Allan Poe was saying is the use of his.
Miss,
Uh, yes, who's speaking?
Miss, I just want to ask you about the audience.